Welcome to our Hurricane Special. We're pleased once again to offer insights into what to expect during this hurricane season from local meteorologist Glenn Glazer and Channel 25 WPBF. Here's Glenn.
Hello, town of Palm Beach. I'm First Warning Meteorologist Glenn Glazer for WPBF 25 News. I want to thank everybody for welcoming me back again this year to talk about hurricane season. And once again, we're going to go over our WPBF exclusive hurricane season forecast because it's a bit different than what you may have seen before. If you watched it last year, you know what it's all about. If not, let me explain. Here's a quick look. We'll start with what's going on with the forecast, and we'll take a quick look back at last year's forecast. These are the areas last year that we designated as landfall hotspots, spots where we thought we could see storms making landfall, and guess what? We were 100% accurate last year. Typically, we hover at about the 85 to 95% accuracy range. Last year, 100% accurate, meaning every storm that made landfall in the areas that we had highlighted, and we put this forecast out in March, way before anybody else puts out a forecast. So let's talk about how it works. We use a method called the LRC, the Lezak Recurring Cycle, named after Gary Lezak, the meteorologist who created it. You can remember it as the LRC Long Range Cycle if that helps, but it basically sets up during the months of October and November. During those months, and sometimes the beginning of December, we watch carefully for patterns in the atmosphere, areas of low pressure that develop and move and then redevelop again and move again to the same places. And once we're able to identify those patterns, then we can apply those patterns to the calendar. Here's what I mean. If we see an area of low pressure develop in the Gulf of Mexico and then it moves over to the west coast of Florida, and then we see that same low redevelop again, let's say 54 days later, which is around what the pattern is this year, 52 days. If we see it redevelop again 52 days later, not only do we know where it's going to develop, but we also know where it's going to go. And that happens again 52 days later and 52 days later, and we can apply that to the calendar every 52 days. Now, this past year in October and November in 2022, we saw a lot of different areas of low pressure, so we had to kind of narrow it down to the ones we thought may make the biggest impacts. And these are the four that we took a look at and said, you know what, these are the ones that could return over and over again as we get into hurricane season for 2023. The one that you see down there just off of Florida near the Bahamas, that was Hurricane Nicole that moved in the beginning of November. It became part of the pattern this year. So here are the areas that we have designated as hotspots for the 2023 hurricane season. They include the west coast of Florida, not all the way south though, pretty much down to right around the Fort Myers area, but not quite. And then the southwestern tip of Florida, not really included in that. The east coast of Florida because of Hurricane Nicole in the pattern, and the Carolinas. All right, here's a look at the west coast of Florida. We saw an area of low pressure develop in October. It moved up into the west coast of Florida in this area, and here are the potential return dates for that area of low pressure. It doesn't mean it's going to be a storm every time. It could just be a rainmaker, but during the months of, well, late May and July and August, there's more fuel with warm water and the tropics ready to go for something to develop a little bit more. So July 12th through the 15th, August 31st through September 4th, if you are in this part of Florida, keep your eyes on the Gulf of Mexico for something that could develop and move in along the west coast. On the east coast of Florida, we're talking about Hurricane Nicole, of course, that moved in November last year. We've seen that same low pressure didn't become a storm again, but it did repeat itself, bringing rainfall and some stormy conditions into the east coast of Florida. That returning May 30th through June 3rd, July 20th through the 24th, and September 8th through the 13th. Again, it might not become another named storm, but it has the potential to do so as it develops during these time frames. Hurricane season forecast, we do put together a forecast for the number of storms we believe will develop. We have gone with an average and slightly above average season for this year. It's pretty close to what Colorado State has done and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. However, we put this out in March. Those forecasts came out later in the year. So we're all close to the same par. We're a little bit higher than some of the other folks that have put out their forecast for this year. So that is a look at our hurricane season forecast. I hope you enjoyed it. You can certainly watch it again and again. It's also located on our website, WPBF.com. Be careful this hurricane season. Listen to all the other great information on this program. Everybody be safe, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you to Glenn Glazer and WPBF Channel 25 for sharing those insights into the storms and storm tracking and what we can expect this hurricane season. Now we're going to shift to personal safety, how to prepare for a storm. And here to talk about how to be prepared before, during, and after a storm is Assistant Fire Chief Sean Baker. Thank you so much for joining us again. You're a very calming presence. Have you been told that before?
Thank you. I have. That's my job, to keep everything calm, right? And as we're approaching the hurricane season, we want to let everyone know, if you have a plan, if you have things in place, it will help you remain calm when the storm is announced, if it heads this way, because you already know what you're going to do.
Now's the time to get ready.
100%.
What are some of the first things that people should do?
So the very first thing I recommend is to get connected with the local authorities, so that if any messages are coming your way, preparation messages, warnings about the storms, those are the things you should do now. Get connected with the Town of Palm Beach Alerts, your favorite local news channel, and make sure all of those feeds are coming your way so that you can get information. Have your hurricane supplies ready to go. Batteries, charge your devices, charge your phones, make contact with family members to let them know what your plan is going to be. Being on the island here, there's a lot of people that are in other places. They have family members maybe in the Northeast or somewhere else. Make sure people know how to get a hold of you during or after a storm. That's really important. There's different levels of preparation, whether you're a resident, you're a stakeholder here, whether you have a business here, each one is very individual. So, we say for the residents, our message to them is prepare your home. Make sure that all the cutting of your trees and everything are done, have your hurricane supplies ready, have someone check out generators in the homes and those type things. For business owners, we make sure that they have the ability to get back on the island after the storm passes through our police department, but also make sure that your business is prepared to have any kind of downtime. If the business is going to be closed, have a continued operation plan so people know exactly how they're going to get paid. All these different things. Who's going to be the emergency responders? For people who have properties during construction, make sure the construction projects have a plan. If a storm is announced, how do we shut down operations and make the area safe as required by the town? So it's really varied, and that's why we say now's the time to start talking with your staff, talk with your family, talk with the condo associations. Have a plan so that when the town says now's the time to put your hurricane plans in action, you're ready to go.
We're reading, it's hard to predict. There's some uncertainty. I mean, there's always uncertainty, right? But there's more uncertainty right now about this coming season. The town of Palm Beach sent first responders on a mission to the West Coast.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that. That was for Hurricane Ian in September 2022. How did those lessons, how will it help prepare them for something like that here?
The lessons were invaluable. We, the fire department, specifically public safety, we are always playing what-if scenarios. If this happens, then we plan to do this. Sending teams over to the West Coast was an eye-opening experience for us. The level of devastation that was experienced by the West Coast, the flooding, the lack of resources, helped us shore up our plans so that we can put those things into effect here. For instance, when we sent the teams over and they were using search and rescue teams from all over the state, we have search tactics that we are employing now and changing so that we can do the same operations here if necessary. Also, the collaboration now with the state. We have plans to talk to the county people and the state members in case there's an emergency. Now, with our members over there, we have direct contacts with some of these people. So we had great communications before. They're even better now because all the pathways have been reestablished, and new members in new roles, we have a relationship with them. Operating in an area where there's literally no infrastructure, how does that operate? There's no GPS, there's no cellular. So, even though we're in a technological age, we have to figure out how to go back to pen and paper so we can handle the missions. So invaluable lessons. We were just happy that we had the resources to send to the teams over there, and hopefully we don't need it, but they'll definitely reciprocate in the future if needed.
There's training all the time. What kind of training do you do here to prepare for something like that?
So our training, things that we do day to day, dealing with utility emergencies, whether it's underground electric, whether it's overhead electrical lines, natural gas emergency, we do those on a day-to-day basis. But operating with chainsaws and cut teams, trying to get access to areas, but realistically, the training for hurricane response. We have crisis track software that allows our crews to go out in the field and record real-time data of what's going on and record damage in the field. We have other software that we could actually train and try and predict what the damages may be, like including flooding. Those things have come into play, and we're training on those. We're doing those tabletop drills just to make sure that we have that ability to operate.
Excellent, excellent. And tell us about the weather STEM station that you have, some new technology.
What we're looking at here is the Town of Palm Beach Weather STEM Station. Essentially what this is the town's own weather station mounted right on the top of our central firehouse, right in the middle of town square basically. This gives us real-time weather information regarding lightning strikes, wind direction, barometric pressure. There's a camera that is mounted where you can actually watch the storms and the wind conditions. This was given to us by the state of Florida on a grant, and it's really important for us during emergency operations during hurricanes. I can tell you exactly what the wind speed is here as opposed to 5 miles west at the airport where we had to rely on before. Anyone that's been to Florida or knows Florida, anywhere within 5 miles, the weather can change 4 and 5 times just based on what's going through at the time. So it's imperative that we have real-time information from our station, and in the Emergency Operations Center, we actually make real-time decisions based on feedback from this device. These weather stations are located throughout the state, so we actually can look at other weather stations throughout the state. For instance, we can look at our partners down in Delray and we can see what the weather conditions are. And if weather is moving this way, we know what to anticipate because we're all connected. The best resource is a local resource. And if you're curious what's going on with the town, the weather STEM system here at the Town of Palm Beach gives you that real-time information so that you can make decisions for emergency operations, evacuations, or anything else you may need.
Thinking about all of that, that brings us to evacuations, because
Yes.
when you see those storms coming, let's talk about the importance of when there is a mandatory evacuation, leaving the island.
So we have to stress, when town officials say it is time to leave, we're asking you to heed those warnings for several reasons. First off, when a storm comes through, if you're on the island, there's a high possibility that we will be delayed getting to you. Based on what we saw in Hurricane Ian, we may not have access to certain areas of the island just because it's impassable. And if you're here, we have to use resources to get to you, right? So you're putting first responders at hazard. But, I use the scenario, if you are in a condo, you chose to stay, you're on the 7th floor. Picture being in that condo for up to 7 days without power or utilities. There's no elevators, there may not be water, there may not be natural gas. Can you remain in that area? So when we say to plan now, where would you go? When town officials say to evacuate, because it may happen, where are you going to go? That's not a decision you want to make at the last minute. If we issue a mandatory evacuation, heed that warning, please.
And just reiterating that if you don't leave the island and it is a horrible emergency, you may not be able to help.
It will be greatly delayed. During a storm, when the winds get up to 45 miles an hour, we can't take our high-profile vehicles out because they risk flipping over. We cannot get to you until after the storm passes. And only then will we be able to get the backlog of 911 calls to come out to you. Now, the roads may be impassable. The roads may be flooded. So it just takes that much more time to get to you. So if you don't heed the warning, you have to make sure that you are self-sufficient for at least 72 hours at a minimum. But also, most importantly, notify people that are off the island that you made the decision to stay, and find out a way that they can get a hold of you.
Okay, that's really important. And you were telling me that one of the biggest issues on the island is flooding.
Yes.
And you know where the areas are most prone to flooding now.
So we do. FEMA has updated their flood maps. We have hurricane software where we can simulate a certain size storm, and we have a very good indication of the areas in the island that will be flooded first. So those would be our target areas. The island has a natural ridge that runs along the South County corridor and North County corridor, and that's the high point. But really, the wind is one problem for the island, but realistically it's flooding. We're a barrier island. So the lake coming up on the intracoastal side, that's where we're going to see the most flooding coming through. And we're pre-planning for that, but it's just something that people should understand. The wind is only part of the issue. It's the flooding, as we saw in Hurricane Ian.
How about after the storm? Is there a specific process for getting back on the island? Will you issue alerts to people through the townofpalmbeach.com?
Yes. Through our town alert system, the police department will control access on the island and people moving around the island, because realistically, after the storm passes, our public works department for the town needs all the time they can to clear the roadways, to make everything safe. The more people that are on the island, the less effective they are, the trucks that are clearing debris.
Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want people in the town to know?
I have to stress, if the town officials issue a mandatory evacuation order, heed those warnings. Get prepared. We have the luxury, if you will, of having a 5 to 7 day notice, because the scientists have really got those models down. So we have time when a storm is approaching. Make plans what you're going to do during a hurricane watch, a hurricane warning, and realize that if a storm is coming this way and it's over a Category 2, town officials, public safety, we evacuate off the island, and we have to come back to the island to come to you. So if we're evacuating, you should evacuate.
You should evacuate too. That's a good point.
Yeah, you should too. But this is nothing to be panicked over. We've done this many times. There's tons of information out there. Keep connected to the Town of Palm Beach alerts, and we'll make sure you have all the information that you need.
Thank you to Assistant Fire Chief Sean Baker for sharing all of that information. And as he said, number one priority is staying safe. Now we're going to talk about what happens when you need to re-enter the island following a storm. And for that interview, William Kelly speaks with Lieutenant Paul Alber from the Palm Beach Police Department.
Hurricane season is upon us again as of June 1st. And so we're here to talk about that today. What do people need to do to be prepared? And I know you have said in the past that it all begins with have a plan. And so what all does that entail?
It starts early. You need to plan ahead to secure your house, prepare a place where you might be able to go if an evacuation order is put out, and you need to prepare your property.
Once an evacuation order has been issued, what is your best guidance to people to move off the island as safely as possible?
If there's an evacuation order, you need to evacuate. We had a very powerful reminder last season with Hurricane Ian on the West Coast. They were hit with 150-mile-an-hour winds in southwest Florida. There was a total of 156 deaths in the United States. 66 of those were from storm surge, and 41 of those were just in Lee County in the Fort Myers Beach, Sanibel area. Those were people that decided to remain on the island, and they paid for their decision with their lives. Those are all preventable deaths. If a storm is approaching and an evacuation order is placed, you need to evacuate.
Do you have any sense of what percentage of residents on the island of Palm Beach typically decide to stay and ride out the storm? And is it mobility issues?
There's a variety of reasons. And we do everything that we can to put out as much information as possible and put the warnings out in a timely manner so that people have the ability to leave. But some people worry about their pets. They haven't made arrangements to evacuate with with their animals.
Sure.
Sometimes it's mobility or health. Sometimes it's just complacency, and they think, well, it's not going to be as bad as they say it's going to be, or it's going to miss us. We do the best we can to put it out there so that you can make good decisions, but there's going to reach a point during the storm, if we have a direct hit, where we're going to pull our people in off the road, and we're not going to be able to come to assist you. And your decision could wind up being a fatal decision. Going back to the Hurricane Ian statistics, there were a number of people that died as a result of their inability to get timely medical care, and that could be a factor too. You make it through the storm, but now you have a cardiac event and you live on the 10th floor and the elevators aren't working. What are you going to do now? You can't, maybe the cell phone service isn't out. That's why it's important to plan ahead. Time is of the essence. So you can start off with trimming your trees, getting your yard ready before the season comes. And then once a storm is approaching, you need to pull in loose items, patio furniture, yard ornaments, anything that could become a projectile during a storm.
Once a storm has passed, the focus becomes reentry.
Yes.
Onto the island. There's a very deliberate procedure there for a lot of reasons. The police department manages that procedure very carefully.
Yes.
What do residents and businesses, what can they do in advance to make the reentry process as smooth as possible for them?
We encourage everybody to fill this form out, get set up on our reentry list.
This is a disaster reentry list, and we're keeping it digitally. And essentially, what we've done in the past is we've had ID cards, and we stopped doing that during COVID, and it's worked for us, so we're going to keep doing that going forward, just keeping a digital list. This year, we've decided to essentially cull this list down because it was a massive list, and what we're really doing is we're only applying this disaster reentry list to that maybe 24 hours immediately after a disaster, where we just need to get people in to do damage assessments. Right? This isn't for a whole bunch of employees. This list is really just to facilitate entry for homeowners, business owners, property managers, people of that nature that might need to be able to get on first and do damage assessments on the property. Once that period ends, and we expect, it's probably not going to be a lengthy amount of time, then we'll open up into other phases and we won't need this digital list for that. And the intention of the list is not to wholesale just deny someone entry because they're not on a list. We're a little more than robots when we have these checkpoints out there. And, we'll have officers and supervision that if someone isn't on a list and they have a valid reason to be over here, we'll handle those things on a case-by-case basis. Now is the time people that should be, signing up to be on this list if it's applicable to them. I mean, we're looking for people that don't have a Florida ID with their address here in town that are residents. People that need to have their property managers on the list, they can do that now, so that we can compile this list. And this list we will keep until the end of December 2024. They won't have to redo it for next year. You can access this on our website, and you can also pick it up in our lobby. But when you have completed this form, right, and you have the backup documentation for it, you can either email it to tcr@palmbeachpolice.com, and we'll process it digitally, or you can physically drop it off here at the police department, or you can mail it to the police department. It will take either of those three ways, and if there's any issues with the documentation, we'll reach out in a timely manner and we'll resolve it.
Our two primary concerns are, number one is safety. We want to make sure it's safe on the island before people start coming back, but we also want to make sure the island is secure.
Lieutenant Paul Alber, thank you very much for being with us.
Appreciate it. It's my pleasure, always.
That wraps up our hurricane special for the 2023 season. We certainly hope that you learned a lot. You'll find resources at palmbeachcivic.org and thetownofpalmbeach.com and through our social media. Stay with Palm Beach TV. We will provide coverage throughout the hurricane season. Thank you for watching.